Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is today we're going to be talking about Cameron's early impressions of Once Human, and I finished Unicorn Overlord, so I'll be sharing kind of my thoughts on that. No new Dawn Trail updates this week. Cam, I imagine, has still been playing it, but nothing so significantly
Yeah,
to discuss worth. So, if you like the show, excuse me, if you like the show, we'd love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Yeah, should be a pretty quick one for you. So, Cam, dive into Once Human first. And I know you say I've watched you play a little of this. I don't recall watching you play a little of this. I feel like we've talked about it. I feel like I vaguely know from a couple things I've seen, but I don't know what this game's really about. So, before your thoughts on it, just kind of general overview of the game.
sure. So, Once Human is a post-apocalyptic multiplayer survival game. It feels the world itself is based off of servers that the company is running, so you're not dealing with any sort of personal instances that you're starting or doing for yourself. So everybody's part of like the same server space. So it feels a little bit like it's a little MMO light in that aspect. The survival aspect of the game is pairs up with this idea that basically humanity for the most part has been wiped out. There's very little remnants of humanity. Basically, the stars fell out of the sky, and has caused what I would describe as Remedy-esque aberrations and creatures to appear or to spawn from people's corpses.
What do you mean by remedy-esque?
I'm thinking like Control, Alan
Gotcha.
Wake. Like it feels very like I get strong Control vibes from many places in this game. With its playing loose and fast with some like very like trippy sci-fi stuff.
I've seen a bus that looks like a giant spider or something like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a lot of like really cool art wise. There's a lot of really cool kind of twisted creatures that are based off of you know. There's one dude who literally is like has a suitcase for a head. And the cool thing is when you kill that guy, you can then grab, if some of them drop their own heads, and you can use as for like a temporary like pickup weapon, their head that then like launches like, I think it's money, like it shoots money at people. Very like, just very kind of like twisted, kind of cool look at that sort of like horror genre blending in with this. Gameplay wise, it's a looter shooter in the vein of like The Division, where I would say there's not a whole lot of focus on the loot getting dropped in like copious amounts. Like you're not going to get, it's not a Diablo, it's not a Borderlands. You're not getting just like spawning, dozens upon dozens of weapons. Things do drop, but really it is about most of the things that drop are either junk that you then can convert into materials, or they drop materials themselves, and that is really where the kind of bread and butter of this game is, which is in the building aspect of it, which is you basically set down your own base very early on in the game. And the great thing about what they do is that I haven't seen anybody else do is if you want to move your base after you've built it out, you can. You just basically say, I want to pick up and I want to move my base. Or I want to settle a new base here, and the outline of your base shows up. And if you can make it fit in an area that hasn't been claimed by anybody, you can just drop your base there. So that way you're never having to be like, well, I guess I have to dismantle this base that I have and go to the next area that I'm going to set up a base. It's nope, moving it, dropping it. Resources are very plentiful. They are not going out of their way to making things super difficult, at least on the lower end levels. I'm sure as you get further on in the game, it will, rarity of items will increase. But it has a really cool crafting mechanism within the game when it comes to weapons and gear that you craft, in that you actually craft parts of that gear that then create the entire piece of gear. So, for example, I want to create a rifle. I want to craft a rifle. Well, I need to craft like 4 individual parts for that rifle, and then I've crafted that rifle. Additionally, there's tiered systems. So if you really like a weapon, you don't have to like toss it because it's no good. You can dismantle other weapons that are better than it and then use those materials to enhance your weapon to the next tier of damage. And so that way you're always like, if you can stick with what you like, but you're always constantly progressing and using materials, which then of course gets you to get into that gameplay loop of I got to go out and get materials.
You've just struck me with a bit of like PTSD that I was actually thinking about not too long ago, in terms of after games like The Division, Destiny, and especially since I put a ton of time into Avengers, one of my least favorite game mechanics these days is I've got a bunch of shitty loot that I don't need, so I now have to spend a second dismantling everything in my inventory just to clear up inventory so I can get more shitty loot. I hate that. So
that's
this
where this comes in and is nice. Is you go to your base, you have a dismantle machine. It literally will list all the stuff that you've picked up that's not like gear focus, and you can auto dismantle it there.
Yeah, I mean they're all the games kind of play around with some kind of version of that, but I still hate that aspect of these kinds of games. So that's why I've kind of stayed away from them for a while.
That's fair.
And yeah, I have. I mean, this being a survival game also is like, oh yeah, this ain't gonna be for me anyway. But yeah, I just I've been having flashbacks. Just like thinking about the amount of time I wasted having to like dismantle hundreds upon hundreds or thousands upon thousands of items and just like hold square for a second each time I do it just to clear out the inventory. I'm just like, oh my God, that's probably hours of my life that I'm never getting back for no purpose. What a sad day. Anyway.
That's such a sad thought, man. Holy crap.
Anyway, I'm glad you're having fun. I'm glad you're using those materials that you're crafting and dismantling to improve your weapons.
Yeah, it's been really great. I will say it is so it's being produced by NetEase, which is a Chinese company. It definitely has a lot of, I would say, like Chinese / Asian MMO feel to it, as far as very focused on the gameplay and the gameplay loops. Story, it's light on it. It's not really, doesn't come off as being that important. Basically, your goal is to make the world a better place. So this character that you meet that kind of saved your life and kind of guided you can come back to the actual world. Don't know why. I honestly, the game is so inconsistent when it comes to like, and this is really what it comes down to, is that this game has a lot going for it, but it is a straight up 6.5 to 7 out of 10. I've enjoyed a lot out of it, but there are glaring performance issues on this game. There's glaring issues with the quality on this game in regards to just one aspect, and that's sound. Everything else about this game is solid, but sound design is something wrong with this game. Guns don't sound good. Like, they just don't sound good, which is a weird thing to say, but a great sound design is so underrated. And that's something that a lot of games, whether it's like The Last of Us Part 2, the sound design in The Last of Us Part 2 is, in my opinion, the best sound design I've ever heard in a game. Just every level of sound design that you can think of, it nails 10 out of 10 on. I've said when we did Game of the Year for that year, that when it comes to the technical aspect, The Last of Us Part 2 is by far the most technically like best game of that year. And I still stand by that. I think it's still one of the, it is one of, if not the best technical games of all time. It's so good, but this is like really not even coming up close to it. Like this thing doesn't even get to hold its jockstrap. Like it is straight up just like not good, but not bad enough that makes me like, it turns me off. It's just something that I just don't pay attention to. It doesn't like, it's so bad that I just don't notice it most of the time. The times I do notice it are when I have inconsistent voice acting. And I don't mean like, oh, sometimes voice actors change or anything. Like sometimes there's just no voice acting, which is fine. But you enter these cutscenes with like people that you're talking to like they should be fully voiced. And sometimes when they are fully voiced, the dialogue that the people are saying does not match at all what's being on the screen. Like the message is kind of the same, but it's like words are just not being used. And it's almost like the subtitle script was written separately from the voice script. And like it was translated afterwards or something.
I was gonna say if it's a Chinese game, I wouldn't be particularly surprised by something like that.
Yeah, it is just like, it is so janky.
Also, one thing I wasn't aware about until like I Googled it while we're on this call. I didn't realize it's a free to play open world.
Oh, it's free to play. So, yeah, I should start off with that. It's free to play.
The free to play nature of it. Yeah, I don't expect technical masterpiece prowess there.
For sure.
Or grind storytelling aspects
For sure.
to this.
Absolutely. This game is really all about the mechanics of play. And they work great. Like, shooting feels good. It's fun. I say it's like The Division in its shooting because there's no, like, aim down scope necessarily unless you have, like, certain attachments for your guns. And it's all based around, rather than it being based on, oh, I shot the thing in the head and it's dead, it's HP bars, you're decreasing it by shooting it. In that aspect, I really like it. I think it's really, really good. I think that this is one of the best things they do is they are like, hey, we don't want you just to run around on our map. We want you to drive on it. So they give you a motorcycle, like, really early in on the game. Like, you can unlock the motorcycle in under an hour in playing the game. And the motorcycle has radio stations on it that touch to actual music. So, like, for streamers out there, the safety on that is always to just keep it on the classical channel. But they have, like, K-pop, and I wish they had a larger soundtrack, but it's a free-to-play game. I'm not busting their chops on that. This is, like, licensed music for the most part. So, solid choices on that, and it's fun driving around this, like, post-apocalyptic world with, like, poppy K-pop, like, thumping. And the music is so, like, mixing on the music is awful because all of a sudden your music is louder than your motorcycle. It's bad. Guns don't sound good. Like, they're inconsistent, like what you think they should sound like. And then there's just, like, overall server issues. Like, these servers are heavily populated. There's a lot of people on them. You get to see other people's bases, which means the opening area when you drop into it, because you come out to the open world coming down on, like, it's not a parachute, but I'm just going to call it the parachute that you have. You just see houses for miles. Sure. Like, people's properties for miles. And there's some people who have really gone out of their way to, like, build out homes and bases and stuff and really cool concepts and materials that they've gathered, and they've really built some really cool places. And some people, janky as shit. Like,
is there PvP in this, or is it just
there
PvE?
can be, but I've been playing on a PvE server. I have zero interest in like, the lag aspects of this game. Like, the lagging on the servers, I have zero interest in dealing with PvP aspects on top of that. So, lots of fun. One of the things they do that's really great is they have several parts of progression. So when I say that, I mean, there's, like, a battle pass for sure, but that's not it. There's also what's called the journey, which is the various different aspects of the game have different challenges associated with it, that as you build out through the game and you learn new things and you do new things, it unlocks those things. And those count for XP and materials and all sorts of stuff. So you're constantly having something that you're, like, working towards. It's not just your level going up. In fact, most of the time, I'm never concerned about my level. Because what's really cool is to unlock new things to build and be able to, like, construct. They don't lock it behind your level. They lock it behind what's called memetics, which are basically points, ability points that you get. They can slot into different trees for unlocking different things. So there's stuff for, like, building, like, if you want to build stuff, if you want to craft stuff, if you want to, like, if you want to do better healing, like, all those different aspects that you'd expect out of a game on something like maybe The Division or something, like, you get that in those ability trees, and they're unlocked through points that you get through doing quests and stuff. So they're not tied to your level. You're not, and at any point you can reset them. Like, it's not hard set. Really cool stuff. There's professions, which are, if you work at a certain thing over time, you unlock, like, a side progression on that thing to basically give you bonuses for it. So, for example, I think it's miner. And so that basically when I'm mining things, when I'm getting ore out of things or rocks out of things, I'm getting bonus of those because I have that as my profession. And you can unlock a total of 10 professions throughout the time. And it's all catered off of, like, what you've been doing. Mm-hmm. So if you've been gathering materials a lot, they're basically like, hey, we know you're gathering a lot of materials. That's what you're focused on. Here's a profession that, like, lets you do that. Yeah. And as you unlock more levels, you unlock more different or you can be more professions at once.
Yeah, a little bit of sounds like Skyrim vibes there of, like, yep. Oh, the more you do a thing, the more you're going to level up that particular thing.
Same thing with, like, Stardew Valley also with its progression, sure. Where you have that going on. Yeah, it's just a really solid, like, the core systems of this game are, like, really stellar. The core gameplay, everything about it, it's just everything that would kind of, like, let this be kind of like a flourish to a better score just isn't there. And it's kind of sad. And my biggest concern about this game is my biggest concern for any kind of like Chinese MMO or Korean MMO, which is this a flash in the pan and then NetEase is just like not going to support it for like seriously for the long term? Mm-hmm. Or is it going to be one of those things like MapleStory that it's going to have like a 10-year lifespan where they're going to constantly support it over the years? Yeah. So like it really is a toss up and it could go either way. It depends on its profitability and everything. But I would say that something that shout out to Snowbike Mike for kind of putting it out there. When I've been like watching, Kind of Funny's review of it, and also like what got me to I downloaded the demo during Steam Fest, and I was like, this is cool, but it wasn't until like it came out, I'm like, I'll give it another shot. Like I wasn't too impressed by it from the demo, but I'll give it another shot. And playing it, the full game has made a difference in that. But the biggest thing about it, I think, is its microtransactions. Its microtransactions are a big negative for it because when it comes to what you can unlock, I think the best people who do it right now is still Fortnite. Fortnite realized, hey, nobody has the money to constantly spend $25 a week on a new outfit.
Except dedicated Fortnite streamers who just make that a whole part of their shtick.
Yeah. For sure. Shout out to those folks. But like their whole battle pass, what they did with the battle pass system, brilliant. You're constantly unlocking something, like it's really good.
That's even on the battle pass. Like when I think of the Fortnite streamers, I'm thinking of like the people that day one of the battle pass just buy all the levels of the battle pass, and so they're like running around in the level 100 outfit, like
That's
from
lame.
the jump and stuff.
That's
No,
lame.
absolutely. But like they have the money to do it because they make.
I thought you were talking about like the premium skins you get from the store. Like they
do that too. But I'm like that's what I'm saying is like they have their audience of like subscribers and stuff that basically like, hey, or the people gift V-Bucks to them or some stuff like that. So they do just put all their money into that, and yeah, they get everything. But yeah, those people are nuts.
Yeah, I would say for
I was gonna say I mean, one of my big questions on any kind of free to play experience is like, what is that like? Okay, how are they trying to make money? Because you had mentioned that they have a battle pass thing here, and what is the issue with like the microtransactions? Is it just like pop-ups, or is it things are on a timer, and so here's how to make the timer go faster?
No, it has what I would call like the issue it has is with its economy, with its microtransactions, in that the currency that you buy is only available in specific amounts, but those amounts don't really line up with value.
Sure.
The great thing that like Fortnite does is you spend, what is it, $8.99 for the 1,000 V-Bucks?
Probably something like that. Yeah.
Cool. You get 1,000. Guess what? That means every battle pass costs $9 or the 1,000 V-Bucks that you get through the battle pass, right? Like either way, like you get your return on your investment on that if you finish it. Like you get that reward for that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't exist here. That like kind of like purchase system doesn't exist. And on top of that, the premium items, they're all skins. They're all like, so it's all cosmetic. All of those are tied to values and amounts that don't really work unless you are like really dishing out and buying the big premium packages of the currency.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, if I do the math on this skin is costing me $25 just for this skin.
I wish it was $25. Like that's another part of the problem is the pricing on it for the premium skin is like $30-something. Jeez. It's not good. This is not, and not only that, but they also have that saying that's on like a sale. And it's like that's not good. Like that's very bad. Like, I don't know. I feel like you need some sort, maybe this is a new avenue for me to do as a career. Have me come in and be an analyst for your digital economies. Your gaming economies.
They don't want your analyst though. They want money, and so they're pricing it because they want money.
No, but that's the negatory thing about it is like people are going to be like wanting to spend money.
No, I mean I imagine they have plenty of people that they're already paying and are investing in this kind of thing, Cameron, and are getting their return on investment.
Here's my concern. If they do, okay, fine. If they don't, that's a concern for longevity of the game.
Sure. I mean, that's
the concern I have bringing up is like you have people like Snowbike Mike who are like, ooh, that's too expensive. Mm-hmm. Mike, charge it. Howard,
Yeah.
is concerned about the price of that. Like that's his talking point for that, and that's why I bring it up.
But there's all, I mean, like, I know, like, Mike has his own, like, little, oh, he pays way too much on a lot of these games. But it's also, like, he does it very specifically on, I think, the games that, like, he really sticks with, like your Warzone and stuff like that.
Not always, but yeah.
But yeah, the other question I was going to kind of circle back to was in that, like, flash in the pan nature. A lot of the conversation around this, and a lot of even what you've said on this, makes like is giving me flashbacks to the beginning of the year, and like, hey, this sounds like Pal World Light. Like, it doesn't sound like it's as flashy or has the gimmick that Pal World had of like,
oh, very different,
it's like Pokemon kind of thing, and it certainly didn't. It like. I'm seeing it pop up all of a sudden because it's the new thing that's out right now.
The new survival game that's big, yeah.
And I think it's benefiting from a relatively quiet summer. But yeah, it's very much like, I think of, there have probably been like 10 free-to-play games that Square Enix has released and shut down in the last year or two.
Yeah.
Like, at least. And yeah, it's most of these games don't have like they don't got the legs. A lifespan. Like, I saw like a report just the other day that of some game I didn't bother to get the name of or something, but it was like, so and so announces that their servers are going to be shutting down 1 year to the day after their free to play game launch, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, they put it out there for a year, they take whatever money they can get from you, and then they're like, all right, let's go ahead and invest in a new thing that might get us a little bit more money. I don't think I think that's the story of most free to play games.
Unfortunately, I think that's the case, or at least it's like, hey, we made this investment, we made this game. Hopefully we get our ROI back, but if not, yeah, we're going to shut the game. Like, we have a runway for a year. Let's see what we can do with it, I think is kind of the story. Yeah. Not everybody gets to be Pal World and gets picked up by Sony to become Sony's own personal Pokemon company.
Yeah, and like NetEase has like a bajillion games in their portfolio. So
absolutely.
Like, if this one doesn't hit, they've got 20 others in the wings that they'll back a little bit more or something.
Yeah, this is another concern of mine. Is like, yeah, I really like this game, but like, what's the time of my investment? Like, what kind of what return on my investment am I getting? And so I haven't spent any money on this thing because, honestly, one, I'm not wanting to spend the money that it costs for those outfits.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the outfits, but there's no way I'm spending that much money on them. Like, it's ridiculous to ask. Granted, whales are going to spend what whales are going to spend. The whales will always spend the money.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the regular folks out there, even people who are more inclined to pay, there's nothing about this that speaks to me that like, hey, these are the good packages to buy. This is the package you want to buy. This is the $19.99 package where you get the value of what should be like $30 or $25. Like, you're not getting that from this. Mm-hmm. So I would say, like, I'm steering clear of that. We'll see what happens in the future. Maybe they'll adjust their economy, which hopefully they do. But otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at their Wikipedia page and I'm realizing, yeah, they've got Marvel Rivals like around the corner. So yeah, if this doesn't make it for them, I'm pretty sure they'll be just fine.
Oh, that's right. They're the Chinese partner for Rivals.
Yeah,
that's right. Which is crazy because they used to be Blizzard's partner for their Chinese, like being the Chinese producer of their games, and Blizzard ended that relationship, and it did not, and like NetEase did not take it well.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Any other thoughts on Once Human before we move on?
Game good. I give it a 6.5 to a 7.
Yeah. So what, like a good to or decent to good? Game?
Decent to good. Yeah, I would say so. No, I'm just gonna say it's a good game.
It's a good game. So
yep.
7.
I get to drive through a post-apocalyptic world on a motorcycle listening to K-pop. Good game.
All right. How like, I guess, how much time have you put into it versus how much more time do you think you'll put into it? Like, have you seen what this game really has to offer? And it's just kind of you like the gameplay loop enough? Or is there still stuff to uncover really for you?
I've put in about 8 hours. I would probably say minimum I got another 8 hours left. We'll see.
Okay.
I could definitely see myself doing that. I'm still in the first area. Like, I haven't even broken out of the first area yet. There's a lot there. Like, that's another thing I would think is in its corner is there's still a lot to do in this game. Like, I have not unlocked further areas. I think somebody said it took them 160 hours to clear out everything in the game. And then they still have like the end game like raids and stuff that exist for it. So, cool thing about it too is that like if you want to solo this game, you never have to group up with anybody. Cool thing. I've never grouped up with anyone. I've done everything solo. But you also have like additional challenges and loot options if you team up with people too.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Also, another thing is, so you are searching down these what's the term they use? They use this very specific term for the basically the big monsters, and after you beat them, you have a chance to capture their like core, and then you take that and kind of pull a power world and make that work for you. So I did one where I got like it was like a janitor, and so now I've got this little like stone dude who goes around and mines the nodes around my base. I have a like there's another one that I know that's like a beaver that does wood. And like other ones do other things. The one you start off with is like a butterfly that is like an actual combat one, and it'll go and attack things for you. And then on top of that, you also have I grabbed one that's a slime, like a blob, that will actually set up a like barricade wall for me to hide behind. So really cool stuff that mixes combat with base building stuff that's in like in the vein of Power World. Very very cool stuff.
Okay. Cool. All right. There's some thoughts on Once Human. So I'm going to swap us over to Unicorn Overlord. I don't think I have a ton of new real thoughts to say about it after kind of my introduction last week, because basically I just kept playing the game and it was just a lot more of that. As we touched on last week, this is a tactics game from Vanillaware. Previously of the 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim.
Yes.
I believe is the order of those words there. Where you are playing and you're kind of following the story of a prince who basically had to flee his little kingdom when it got overthrown by like traitorous army and like magical forces that maybe were controlling, like mind controlling all of your mother, the queen's like soldiers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, over the last 10 years, basically, like, the whole world, effectively, like, your continent and then, like, the 4 kind of continents around you have been slowly, like, taken over by this main force. And you basically are building up the Liberation Army to take them back out, kind of piece by piece. So you kind of go into your central area a little bit and kind of do some little initial kind of exploration and like you'll go into like an encounter and it's all tactics based. So you are you have like your maybe you'll start out with like a squad of like 6 characters and you can control like 2 units and you can have like 3 people in each unit kind of thing, and you plop them down on the map and you kind of direct them where to go to encounter and face off with the other enemies. And when they engage in combat, they kind of auto fight based on whatever abilities and powers and like equipment they have based out. And you'll see kind of going into the combat like like the enemy has 50 health and you have 27 health, and after this combat the enemy is going to have 10 health and you're going to have 25 health because your stuff is going to do so much better than their stuff, or you're going to heal up while you do damage and all that stuff. So you can kind of see like combat much like if you like play like the fast forward versions of like Fire Emblem games and stuff like that. It's the same kind of thing here where like, oh, you can go into the battle and you can like watch the whole sequence of events play out, or you can hit like the options button and it'll just kind of like auto quick battle and you'll just stay on the overview screen. You'll see your like the little HP changes among your team. You can certain units will have like certain abilities. So like if you get like a mounted unit on horseback, they'll be able to move around the battlefield kind of twice as fast. So if you like need to, drive, and you can basically choose the leader of your unit, and that's what dictates like their ability, their power. You can have like archer units and mage units that can assist you, where like, oh, my fighter is going to go in, but my archer's a little bit behind, and they'll have like a radius where if you get into combat and you are in their radius, you can like push square and they will like do a volley of arrow shots to start out the battle and basically add a little bit of damage to and kind of help you out. Or the mages will launch some fireballs in there and do some damage. So you can basically like supplement your fight, so it's not just your stuff. You're also getting some assists in there. Or similarly, if you have like a cleric who's nearby, they can launch some heals at you to assist and stuff like that. So you just kind of go through, and it is a very tactics kind of based thing where you'll jump into a map and there's a couple garrisons, there's a bunch of units, there might be like a bridge that you can take over, or a little watchtower where like if you have an archer in the watchtower, their radius of support extends significantly, so they can launch arrows from there much further for you. And you're basically just trying to take out whoever the commander is and make sure that your home base doesn't get wiped out. You have like limited, I think they're called valor points, and basically like it costs 1 valor point to deploy a unit. So as you build up your army, and you can get up to 10 different units that you're launching out at any given time, you'll have that, like when you take out enemies, you'll get some valor points back. When you take over a base, you'll earn some valor points, and you can use those valor points to either deploy other units, or each of your units will build up like an arsenal of like overworld attacks that they can do. Like an archer can shoot an arrow rain attack where they can basically like shoot, like pick a little circle on the map, and they'll launch a volley of arrows to anybody in that range outside of combat. So just kind of takes out, boom, 6 hit points from everybody in that unit. Cool. Now they're a little bit weaker when you actually go in and engage them in combat. Or you can use some ability, like there's spellcasters can use a gravity spell that will like very significantly slow people who are trying to move through a certain area of the map or something. So if you want to like create like an ambush spot, boom, cast gravity with one enemy, and then like an arrow rain with another, and they're just gonna, and then like launch a catapult at another or something, and you'll just wreck shop. Lots of fun, and like typically as you're going through the story, you're just collecting more and more allies. You get a lot through like the main story, and then you also get a lot through like side quests and side stories and stuff like that. But you can also just go into any of the like overworld garrisons and hire mercenaries, depending, like you basically will be given like, at this garrison I can pick either a sellsword or a thief or an archer, and you basically like pick them and you give them a custom name or whatever, and they'll just kind of join your squad, and you can use them as another unit, even if they're not going to have like story stuff going along with them. Because as I mentioned last week, this has, much like a Fire Emblem, there's a rapport system, and so as units fight together, they'll get a little bit of rapport each time. Then you can also like do certain events that'll kind of boost up rapport. You can give characters gifts, and that'll give rapport points. In some of the bigger towns in the game, they have taverns where you can get like, you can select one from like 3 meals, and it's like, this meal is going to cost you 1,000 gold, but you can have a meal with 4 different people, and all 4 of those people will get 100 rapport points, together, and kind of mix and match that. Rapport points have 3 different rapport levels, and you'll get like a little scene for each level, kind of telling the story of those characters' relationship over time. I don't think there's any like tangible benefit to the rapport points apart from if you go and like seek out those scenes, you'll get honor points, which is another one of the game's currency, and honor points are what you use to promote your units, to hire more mercenaries, or to like expand your units from like, this unit can now have instead of 3 characters, this unit can have 4 characters in it at any given time. And one that I don't think I'd probably encountered a lot was promoting units. So, if you have an archer, at some point, once they're like a high enough level, you can pay some honor points to promote them, and that archer will go from an archer to a sniper, and the sniper has, improved stats, improved abilities to go along with it. It's the same kind of like, 2-tier level system or character system. Like you'll have like a wyvern archer, and then a wyvern master or something like that. Basically, each of your main classes will have a level up version. And yeah, like overall, lots of fun story stuff there. I'm sure there's a ton I didn't see. We talked about last time. You'll be given kind of the option at a lot of places of like, hey, this was your enemy, but turns out they were corrupted by the big bad spell. Do you want to, spare them and recruit them to, join your forces, or do you want to execute them? And you pretty much always want to recruit them because it builds up your army and you get more and more fighters that way. But if you do go the route of executing them, then the story will kind of adjust, and just like in a Fire Emblem where like, oh, that character died and I was doing permadeath, so now I'm not going to get that, aspect of the story. You'll get the same kind of stuff here. Like there was one character, I think I mentioned last week, that like I spared, but I didn't let him run free. I basically said, hey, I'm going to put you in jail. I re-encountered that character later after he had like broken out of jail. And if I had spared him in that initial thing and let him flee, I would have been able to recruit him after the second time I fought him. But because I had jailed him, he still held like a grudge against me. And even though I spared his life after the second time, he never ended up joining my party. I never saw him again. But I looked and, I could have had him as, a member of the Arsenal, the Liberation Army. There's a lot of like little side questy collectible things that you can find over the course of the game. There's some like little mining areas where you can do like a little mining game that reminded me of the Forbidden Bone Island thing from Final Fantasy VII, the original one.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
okay,
like,
wow.
Yeah, where you basically like you're just digging around a little map for a little period of time. It's less like that, but that's like the flashback I had from it. It's you go around, you mine, you might like get a little arrow saying, "Hey, you want to go in that direction." And when you like actually find the thing, you're gonna get a little meter that goes back and forth, and you're like, "Oh, I've got to get 150 is the depth of this thing that I need to dig." And I'm gonna hit back and forth. I hit it here. That's worth 20. So it goes back and forth, and you just keep doing that until you get the 150 points, or until you like get whittled down to 150. But you're always on like a timer for the digging. So like once the timer runs out, it's like, okay, here you got some of this ore, you got some of these stones, and hey, you found a little treasure map. And I look at the treasure map, and it points me to an area on the overworld, and if I go search that place, I'm going to get like an extra little prize kind of thing. So yeah, lots of fun little side things to do. I got the platinum in the game, so I pretty much did every little extra thing you can do. Although there's I'm seeing there's like some extra kind of post game content too that might still be in there if I want to dig in deeper and just kind of keep playing there. But yeah, a lot of fun. I'm gonna say it's probably an 8 out of 10 for me. A great game. Doesn't make it up to like the heights of like an Incredible, which I think would be a 9 on our scale. But it's a great time. It is a little too samey. After like
I was gonna ask,
you kind of go through like the combat's always fun, and it'll throw new puzzles at you. Like at some point you're gonna get you're gonna have to deal with like winged units are coming after you, or at some point you'll like the enemy will start using a little bit more clever tactics, and they'll try and like pincer you, or they'll have enemies sneaking through the woods, and you won't be able to necessarily see them unless they're like really close. So there were a couple times I got kind of a game over where like I left my home little area unguarded because I was just kind of like moving all of my units forward and on the attack, and didn't realize that like there was a little forest area nearby, and like a little thief unit was sneaking through, so I didn't see it until it's like right in range and too close, and I didn't have any valor points to be able to deploy somebody to my home base area, so it took over and was like game over. And I was like, well, now I know when I reload the game to hold somebody back in case they sneak up on me and stuff like that. So the game does a little bit of like introducing new ideas and mechanics over the course, but especially if you're doing everything and you kind of have to do everything to like stay
Okay.
at a level, or you're going to have to like go, there's some missions that you can like replay over and over again and like grind experience points out. Or I was also collecting a lot of items that would have like just given me a bunch of experience points and leveled up a bunch of my characters that I just wasn't really using. So I might have been able to mitigate some of that, but like, yeah, I played even on story mode and felt like to keep all, especially when I got like a full 10 units and, 40 to 50 characters that are constantly like in rotation, to keep all of them at the level where they need to be against like the level of the units of the higher end game missions. I felt like I had to kind of be doing every little side quest and unlocking every town and helping everybody out to stay apace. I did get to a point in probably the last 4 or 5 hours, and I think this was like a 40-hour-ish experience over the last week or so. But yeah, like in the last 5 hours, I had like my main unit. I had just a squad that was out there and would just wreck shop anywhere. So I could kind of have them just kind of paving the main path, and then I'd have like a few other units kind of picking up the bones and cleaning up, some side stuff on the way, just to keep them also leveling up, so that, if I did get to that point where I was going to need to help, or need some help, or need some reliance on some other characters, trying to keep them up there as well. But yeah, like I said, there's the game's broken into like 5 main areas, and I felt like the last 2, while they did interesting new things like environmentally, like the first 2 you go to are pretty much straightforward, and they're pretty much like you can go to either of these in any order. But then once you do those 2, it's very much like, okay, now go up to the snow area, and hey, the snow area is now throwing blizzards at me, which limit visibility, so I can't see the full battle map or something like that. And kind of introducing some new elements like that. And also like the North Snow area also had like the a whole new species of creatures, of like, oh, all of these creatures are bestial creatures. So it's like werewolves and were owls and werebears and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, I'm fighting, beastie creatures and recruiting those to my team. That's an interesting new flavor compared to everybody just being like a warrior of some sort.
Yeah.
But yeah, by that time, it's still, well, the gameplay is still pretty much the same of, okay, jump into a combat and try and, avoid the traps that they lay out for you, or like sometimes they're going to throw like, okay, there's bear traps or there's barricades on the ground that you either have to avoid or like blow through, or like, attack or something like that. Or you have, your flying units that can fly over it and, and kind of attack in place of that option or something. So yeah, like the game, much like I think a lot of Fire Emblems do, like gets a little bit repetitive-y and a little samey for a lot of the stuff and a lot of the fights. But still had a fun time, and it was still always fun. Like it was, I'll say, I watched a lot more of the like back and forth of the active battles early on in the game.
And then just start
By the end game,
through.
I was just constantly hitting start to like skip battle, just like, yep, I see that I'm going to completely wipe this guy out. Cool, skip battle. To the point that like usually if you go in and watch the battle at like the end of any, especially the end of like the story missions, your character will have some sort of, conversation with like the boss of the area kind of thing. I stopped seeing that because I just kept even skipping those battles.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, I was just.
So you're just done.
Yeah, I was just like a lot of times it's just the same kind of like you like, oh, you've made it through my forces. Well, that stops now, and I'm going to defeat you. And you're like, this ends today. You need to stop. And it's just kind of like it's very like anime-esque kind of like generic writing.
That's a bit. That's. I will be completely honest. Hearing that they had taken on kind of like a Fire Emblem type game, I was really hoping for a lot more of the. Like, there's a lot of really solid writing and a lot of solid like things that happen in Aegis Rim. That I was hoping would carry over to this game, but it like the more and more I saw of it, and the more that I've heard you talk about it, the more I'm like, they instead of giving you, and I think this was a bit of a problem with also Eiyuden Chronicles, is you have this massive cast of characters that you're making, and like, so you're losing focus on good writing for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think they all have an interesting little story. It was just, yeah, I don't really feel like seeing 70 characters, different stories. Some of them, it was like, oh, they're, one of the areas is like elves, and oh, there's like light elves and dark elves, and there's an interesting like political dynamic between those. But like, the rulers of the area are a pair of twins, a light elf and a dark elf, and they've been estranged for a little while. And there's like an interesting little story there if you go and like get the rapport stuff, or even because it's not just like your character rapport with every other character, it's how the characters interact with one another as well. So just like with like the later Fire Emblems, I think. So like going in and popping in and seeing those little stories, they're interesting stories, but they're little 3-part stories because it's okay, here's rapport scene 1, here's rapport scene 2, here's rapport scene 3. And then others are like, oh, one of your best buddies from childhood is really bad at cooking. So some of his scenes with other characters are going to be like, he's trying to get you to make eat a dish that he made, and you're like, oh my god, this tastes great. And then somebody else comes out and is like, oh my god, I broke my tooth trying to eat your dish. He's like, well, 1 out of 7 wasn't bad. And so there's like little funny stuff in there. Like I think especially like the lore nerd in you, like there's also like a huge codex of things that I kind of glossed over and skipped through because that's just not really what I'm like. I was in this much more for the gameplay compared to like the story stuff. Like I would see like, oh, I've unlocked all these rapport scenes, but you then have to go to like a location on the map to actually like go see the rapport scene.
Okay.
And the game will like, you can basically say like, just fast travel me to that spot or to the town near that spot. But then there's also an element of like, hey, you got the rapport scene and it's in, to see that scene, you have to go to this town, but maybe you haven't saved that town yet. And so there is also an element of like, you have to kind of complete the map to see all of those things too. And if some things happen out of order or like, oh, well, now I'm unlocking rapport scenes from, the other side of the map that I don't really feel like running back over there and just kind of popping through each of those scenes. I just kind of didn't. Like, it would be a thing of like, oh, yeah, if I'm running by and I see like the little heart icon for the rapport on the map, sure, I'll pop up there and check out the scene. But I wasn't like going out of my way to see how these little like scenes buttoned up or anything like that. But yeah, there are a lot of fun little ones there. But yeah, I think it's much more akin to like Fire Emblem in terms of writing. I can't speak to what Aegis Rim's kind of story overall was. There is also
very different, very, very different.
There is also an overall story, and like the big bad that you're kind of facing off against is like controlling or manipulating kind of each of the big bads in the different continents that you're going across. So there's like interesting like stuff at play there and a mystery of like what's their like real end game, why did they take over this continent this way versus why did they approach it this different way over here, and the different leaders of each area kind of join forces with you to be temporary allies in some fights and stuff. And so you get like, there's a lot of cool story stuff in there,
for sure.
But I would say it's like, this isn't like a big Final Fantasy kind of thing, or
no,
like it's
I get that.
Gameplay first, story is flavor for the characters.
I get that.
But again, since it's, hey, you might not get all these characters, or you might not get half of these characters if you don't do all the side things. It's very like, we can't make it too intertwined because if you don't have any of those characters, you still need to have like at the end of the game, it's like the no spoilers or anything, but like there was a scene at the end of the game where it's like, okay, yeah, those are like the 10 characters that are like that you're guaranteed to collect through the main story stuff, that you're not given an option to like let them live or let them die. So like that's who appears and is animated into like the final sequences, versus like all of the optional characters that I've added into the mix. Same way with like, you go back to ending cutscene for Final Fantasy VII, and hey, Yuffie and Vincent aren't in there because hey, you maybe didn't get those characters.
that makes
And we
sense.
didn't want to create a CG render of what that looked like 3 different ways or 4 different ways or however many ways. So it's that kind of thing. Where,
I get that.
Like they to make it as flexible as they make it, some sacrifices happen story wise.
For sure. And I totally understand that and that aspect of it. I'm a big fan of the Vanilla Soft. I usually get to their games very late. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim was like the one I didn't. I'm talking like I didn't get to Odin Sphere until the PS4 era. Like
The remaster.
the remaster version, like way after. And I've never played their Dungeon Quest one, like the dungeon one. It just I haven't. But every time I've played one of their games, I'm blown away by like the writing and the characters and what's going on with it. But so I'm a little sad about that. But also at the same time, I'm seeing that same issue with this many characters, and I didn't bring it up earlier, but I stopped a mid playthrough where I unlocked every single recruitable character in Fire Emblem Three Heroes. Or sorry, Three Houses.
Yeah.
Three Heroes.
Three Heroes was the Muso.
The Muso one. The Three Houses. I recruited all the potential recruitable people, and now I'm at a point where I have so many people, I don't know what to do, and I'm not like close particularly with any of them. And like there's that issue there.
Yeah.
Whereas in my first playthrough, I was the Golden Deers. I had most of the Golden Deer. I had the Golden Deers, and then I had a couple other people I was able to snag.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I was mostly my core Golden Deer crew. And so like that was a big thing, was like I'm like, I'm kind of like I don't know what to do because I go into battle and I have a lot of mismatched units at this point. And so I kind of like just stopped playing it over time. And that's what I'm kind of like hearing you talk about that. That's what I'm kind of hearing here with that.
Yeah.
In which case, I think if I ever do end up playing it, I will be executing some people.
You can definitely do that, yeah. I mean, because again, there's still absolutely plenty of like characters that you will find. I liked the benefit of not executing people is okay. Now I have that type of unit at my disposal if I need it.
Sure.
There was definitely like
Okay, quick question.
Yeah.
Did you ever execute anybody?
No, I think that I pretty much, it was all like I always went with the option that was okay. This is the option that's going to let me like recruit them or keep them alive, kind of thing.
I think the biggest thing that I also didn't like is like the cop out of like, oh, brainwashing. Like I think one of the things Fire Emblem does really great is the only time I've ever seen brainwashing used, it was not brainwashing so much as like a greater temptation. In Fire Emblem, I forgot it's the second Fire Emblem game with Marth. One of your allies turns out and backstabs you. He's become emperor of the entire continent, and he like totally backstabs and betrays you. And when you get to the core of it, you find out that he has been corrupted. I guess that's the point. Corruption versus brainwashing. Like there is a level of agency with that when you take that away, I feel like it's less interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously used the example of brainwashing, especially last week, because those were a lot of the people I was encountering earlier on. It's not like not all of the people that you're going to redeem were brainwashed. A lot of them they might not be aligned with the big bad, but they're still kind of like protecting their people, and they think you're coming in as an invading force, and so there are other things at play over the course of the game. So it's not everybody being brainwashed, but at the same time, I wasn't particularly bothered by it. Maybe because the immediate thing that's flashing through my brain is like Final Fantasy IV is one of my favorite games, and Kane's whole thing is very much like brainwashed by Golbez, and is he a friend, is he a foe kind of thing over the course of that game. So doesn't really bother me because there's always like an aspect of like, oh yeah, you were brainwashed, and he brainwashed you because you were valuable to him, as opposed to killing you and just putting somebody else in your place. So there is I think an element there that's fun and does get explored a little bit over the course of the game. I'm happy. I mean, like I said, I'm done with it at this point, so I'm happy to loan you my copy if you're.
Oh, solid! You got it on disc.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Disc. So yeah, you can borrow that and check it out and see. if it does anything for you. But back to the like executing versus not executing people, I still would opt to go with like, hey, let me keep all these people because again, a lot of times it's going to be like, oh, this is a new unit type that I'm getting by like sparing this person's life, and it's way easier to just get that unit type and have a story character tied into it as opposed to okay, well, now I can go hire somebody to use that unit type, but I need to spend resources to do that. They a lot of the and you might just get these if you execute them. I don't know, but like a lot of the units that you recruit will come in with like appropriate level gear for their stuff versus like a lot of times when you're just hiring a unit outright, they're going to have like the super basic gear and you're going to need to like stock up and staff and like upgrade their equipment or something. So yeah, and the like I said, after the first couple of continents, I pretty much had my like full 10 units. I think at that point like 3 to 4 units kind of per area, and so I had a good 10 to 20 characters that like weren't in the regular rotation. But when I moved to like the new area, I made a conscious effort to like swap out some of the elves from the second area for some of the beast people in the new area so that like they would be around and in the stories. There's also some interesting dynamic elements in some of the combat. I think this is kind of a Fire Emblem like as well, where like, oh, you're facing off against this guy. Well, that guy is like my friend from way back, and I think I can convince him. I think I can talk to him.
Oh yeah, that's classic. That's
so you'll
classic.
have like if you have like that enemy on the battle or that character on the battlefield, instead of just battle this enemy as an option, you'll have battle or talk. And if you basically talk to them, they'll maybe stand down or they'll switch sides and kind of join your team or something like that. So there were cool little elements like that if you have like the right mix and match of options among your crew. So
I mean that goes back to Fire Emblem 1 where you could like your second battle ever you can talk to like one of the distinct looking thieves characters and it turns out he's a mercenary so you can hire him. Really cool stuff. I dig that. I think I'll play it. I have other things I still need to play, so I'll be doing those, but it's definitely on my list of things to check out.
I mean, yeah, like I would say like the little like the start of the game is like the 10 years ago and you're basically controlling your character's mother, the queen, and kind of going in and introducing the combat and a little bit of the stuff, and then like the prologue after that is you like come to or you're fast forward 10 years later and you're on this little island where you've got like your couple of crew of friends, but now you're of age and now it's time to go really try and like raise up the resistance forces that have been kind of like brewing and percolating underneath. So, but the enemies also kind of, arrive on your island. So there's like a little kind of couple levels on that island that are like, here's the main ideas and the main mechanics of this game. So, first couple hours are kind of your tutorial. And if you like that, that's pretty much a good indicator of like what the rest of the game is going to be. And it'll kind of like introduce new little things piecemeal over time. But for the most part, it's like, the core game thing. It again, the thing that was like a little off-putting initially for me was that I wasn't controlling like the minute-to-minute combat. It was, hey, they're using abilities based on, the different things. And if I really wanted to get in the weeds on this, that would have been where there would have been like way more options for customization, stuff like that, because it is like the gambit system of Final Fantasy 12 where it's like, okay, set up this order of events and hey, this thing's your number one, so you're going to use this and you can set the conditions on like, okay, use this ability but only if these conditions are met. And then, if those conditions aren't met, you're going to use this next ability. And then if those
micromanaging
your
exactly. Characters. Yeah, that's so annoying.
I almost entirely through the game went basically like in your character screen, you can you're selecting the equipment, like the weapon, armor, and accessories that they have equipped, and a mix of those items and your character's like level and abilities will dictate what you have access to in your little like abilities pool. Almost the entire time I just went through clicked options on the weapons and selected the optimize button. And then I went down, clicked options on the abilities and clicked optimize there, because it will say, okay, well, here's, an optimal build based on the equipment that you have that is unequipped. Here's what you can, throw on this person. It's not perfect. It definitely prioritizes some things that I didn't always want it to prioritize. So there were a couple times I had to get in there and like manually manipulate the weapons or the equipment build. But I never really bothered going hard on the abilities. I was just like, this is way too much thinking that I don't want to have to do with. But that is where like you would really get in the weeds on the tactical stuff of like, oh, because even one of the things I found like really late in the game, when you go into a battle, you can immediately jump into the battle. You can use items if you want to like, oh, my characters are a little weak. Let me go ahead and like, revive that guy and heal these people up a little bit before we jump in the battle. Because that's very much going to change what kind of attacks and stuff will happen during the battle.
That makes sense. Okay.
But I realized way too late in the game that even like positioning can wildly change the turn, how the battle plays out. Like, and part of it is just the way the way it's tutorialized to you. It's like, hey, you've got this unit now. This unit works really well in tandem with this other unit. And it'll give you like the little thing of like, oh, put a thief up front and put an archer in the back or something like that. And so I kind of like stuck with like a lot of those like early first ones that like resonated with me. But then, by the time I'm looking at 50 different, classes or something like that, I'm like, I don't know what the best way to mix and match these are, and I'm not going to go super in depth for like, oh, this enemy, or like each time you go into a battle, it'll say like, these are going to be the primary enemy types of this battle. And so you can take that as an opportunity to be like, okay, well, let me plan accordingly. Let me step back out, like completely re-manipulate all of my units and, make an optimal setup for that. I never did that. So it was super late in the game when I realized, okay, you can go into the battle, you can use items, or you can organize your unit. And if you go in and organize your unit, you can, at no cost to you in the throes of combat, you can just kind of like, you've got your like little grid of 2x3, 6 units. Mm-hmm. And you can like, okay, I'm going to move this character from the center front to maybe the back left or something like that. And then you pop back out and the numbers of like, here's how the battle's going to play out will change. And so it'd be like, okay, if I do it this way, I'm going to take out 10 damage and I'm going to heal 2, on my team or something like that. Okay. Now if I, switch this up, switch these units around, like just let me flip where these 2 units are on the map. Oh, now instead of doing 10 damage, I'm doing 270 damage.
Shit. Fuck. Okay.
And I'm also taking, 20 damage. So I'm not healing anymore, but like it would just be wild swings.
Wow.
Or there would be things where it was like, okay, if I do it this way, they are going to kill me. Let's see if I can switch these 2 units around. Oh, now I'm going to kill them and take no damage from them. So it was like wildly changed the tide of battle. So there'd be a few fights near the end where I was just like, all right.
So you gotta play around with those details.
Based on how this fight is like by default going to go for me, I'm going to lose. And I'm going to lose hard, and I don't want to do that because if a unit is fully destroyed, they are out of the battle and can't like. Otherwise, units can be healed up, and you can like send them back to a garrison or something. They'll heal up over time, or you can use items to heal them like very quickly. But if a unit is completely wiped out, completely destroyed, they're done for the combat. I don't think there is an option like there is a permadeath thing that will completely wipe them out. But there might be. I doubt it though. I don't think that's this game's kind of vibe. But yeah, it was like seeing that and just being like, all right, well, I'm going to lose this one really bad. So is there any option, any permutation of the order of these figures? I can't change the characters that are in this unit at this point, but I might be able to like reconfigure them in a way that's, gives me a little bit better of a result. And sometimes it was just, okay, I'm still going to lose, but I'm not going to lose nearly as badly. And I'll probably take out one of their units, which is going to make the next time around better. And my team will be stronger, especially since I can heal them up before they go back in for round 2. But whereas the enemy can't, like the enemy's not using the potions or the revive items to bring people back. So like, as long as you take one out, your next go is going to be a little bit better, going to go a little different. So yeah, there was a lot more like tactical stuff I absolutely could have been doing on this, but that wasn't really the experience I was digging into. I was having a good time just kind of letting the optimal stuff do it. And my tactics were confined to like the overworld and figuring out when I want to, use an overworld attack versus when I really want to go in and do the melee stuff. And kind of, that order of operations. So yeah, like I said, you're welcome to borrow my copy and see if it's a game that clicks for you. If not, totally understandable. Totally get it.
Hey, if I don't have to, if there's no entry price, might as well,
Yeah. It's that Game Pass model there for you. But yes, that I'm trying to think. See if I can quickly pull. I mean, I've played so few games this year that it's easily, I think, still it's easily in my top 10 because I think every new game I've played this year is still currently in my top 10. But I would say this is this is probably a top 5 for me for the year so far.
Nice. Okay. Solid.
Let's see. Yeah. Well, I guess right now it depends. Like right now, my number 5 is Open Roads that we talked about a little while back, and so it'd be like, okay, gameplay wise, I probably like this better than Open Roads, but I really like the Open Road story. So it's kind of like, okay, what's ultimately going to win out in that conversation, which is always the thing with gaming. At the same time, like I like this gameplay maybe a little bit better than Balatro, but I really like Balatro's gameplay and the hook and the loop of it. So like, this can easily be a top 5 game, but I also I fully expect this will be still somewhere in my top 10 by the end of the year because I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Those are my thoughts on Unicorn Overlord, a 8 out of 10 great game for us. And I think that's going to do it for us. So thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about these couple of things. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to my LinkedIn page, folks. I'm looking for work. That is, that's outside of that, massive shout out to our previous episode that we just did about Deadpool, of Logan, on that D Plus show. Phenomenal episode. I did not expect us to have that kind of conversation about the film, but I'm really glad we did. We really got really deep into what kind of symbolically that movie kind of made us feel.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
It was we had a nice little side tangent into loss and obviously something that Logan has dealt with a lot in that film and does continue to deal with it. And we had a few key losses in our lives that happened between when we first saw it versus now watching it that have recontextualized elements of that film. So it was a fun. I was not anticipating going down that route either as we did, but
it was amazing. It was very tender moments in that podcast, which is not what you expect out of a film. I think when you think about the violence
out of the rated R Logan that has boobs and lots of gross violence on Disney Plus.
Was not expecting us to have this deep conversation about loss and what it means to to say goodbye to people, or rather not have the opportunity to say goodbye to people. We have a brilliant, beautiful conversation about loss, and I highly recommend people go check it out. Also, I do need a job. So that's shout out to linkedin.com/Cameron M. Abbott. Go check that out, I guess. But other than that, I think, more seriously though, do check out the podcast. It was a phenomenal podcast. One of the best I think we've had in not in a long while, but certainly not your typical That D Plus show for sure.
You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to That D Plus show, absolutely go check that one out, as well as check out this upcoming week's That D Plus show, where we'll be talking about the last couple episodes / the season as a whole of The Acolyte as that winds down here. Stay tuned for all that. I know you talked about, Cameron. Nobody going to hold you to this, but you mentioned maybe you're going to look at streaming since you are kind of in between jobs at the moment.
Yep. I realized, especially the last time, granted, the last time I was only unemployed for 2 weeks, was not a very long time to be unemployed in comparison to folks, in comparison to previous periods I've been unemployed. But I realized the enemy of being unemployed is empty time.
Sure.
And so I'll be looking at. I have not even booted up any like testing streaming stuff yet. So
Sure.
obviously, I'm going to test that first. Make sure we can get that streaming.
Yeah, we're effectively having the programming discussion here at the end of the podcast.
Pretty much,
Like,
yeah. Welcome
hey,
to a production
Cameron
meeting.
might be.
I
Might be streaming on the That Nerdy Site Twitch and YouTube channels.
Yeah. So if you're
Keep
interested,
an eye out or ear out for that.
yeah, don't even know what I'd be playing. We'll see. Stuff came out on Game Pass that I'm interested in, so I might check that out. But yeah, I will be streaming. It'll likely be sometime in the afternoon, early evening. But other than that, I mean, yeah, just check out our, That Nerdy Site Twitter and Instagram. Sorry, just the Twitter probably. That's what we actually send things out on. So check that out over there, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. All right. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, please remember to rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that good stuff. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.